Baldur's Gate 3 has made its mark on this video game industry. This is a game that not a lot of people were talking about entering into 2023, but now has all eyes on this entire industry, from gamers to developers, and it has been the topic of discussion the last couple of weeks. And some of that has been controversial, especially in regards to what Baldur's Gate 3 represents for this industry moving forward. Does it set a new standard? Does it not set a new standard? That has been the conversation lately. And if you look at Metacritic right now, this is the best reviewed game of the year, a 97 out of 100, 43 critic reviews, and the user score is pretty much right on point too, a 9.2. Best reviewed game of the year. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is the closest. I think that's at a 96, but this very much could be the Game of the Year award winner at all of the game shows later on this year. And all of the reviews that are coming about right now from the main outlets, it's been extremely positive. IGN saying not everything needs to be nearly as big as and ambitious or even as dense as Baldur's Gate 3, but if I had to point to one paragon that I would like everyone else making CRPGs to take inspiration from, this is absolutely it, and they gave it a 10 out of 10. PC Gamer giving it the highest review rating that they've ever given, I think in the last 15 or so years, a 97 out of 100, them calling it the new pinnacle of the genre. We even saw Larian's founder, Sven Vink, responding to this review saying, holy shit, and he also added, so proud of my team, none of us can believe this is really happening, but the greatest thing about all of this is that we can continue to make games like this. Yes, they are risky and ambitious, and stuff sometimes goes wrong, but it's what the studio was created for. Baldur's Gate 3's reception shows there's room for this type of game. I hope we get many more like it, and that's an opinion I think all of us have. Now, we also saw that another developer for Baldur's Gate 3 saying, Mom, oh, that's nice, honey. Her responding to the review score for Baldur's Gate 3, saying, we're now the best computer game of all time. Her mom saying, great. So it's just funny. It's awesome seeing Larian celebrating their success here, because this is a studio that had a lot riding on the success of this game. It could have gone wrong and they could have gone bankrupt. I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. It's not like they had the funding, the backing of a major publisher. They didn't. This was a risky venture and it worked out, and now all eyes will be on them moving forward with whatever they have planned for the future. Now, as we've been talking about, Baldur's Gate 3 did hit over 800,000 concurrent players on Steam. It actually increased over the last couple of days to 875,000 it peaked at. I think the only other game this year that was a little higher in terms of single player was Hogwarts Legacy. Harry Potter IP, that's kind of a given, but something like Baldur's Gate, that's just crazy how massive this has blown up to be. But again, the conversation surrounding this game has gotten very, I wouldn't say it's been toxic, but it has definitely been very divisive online. It all started with this specific article coming from Game World Observer. Why devs consider Baldur's Gate 3 anomaly, not new standard for RPG genre. It's Rockstar level nonsense for scope. Now, this originated, this piece, because of an indie developer, and they shared their opinion. We've talked about this endlessly. I'm not going to go through the tweets, but they talked about Larian's history, how they've blown up, and how this shouldn't be the new standard moving forward. And we saw a lot of AAA developers chime in. That was the real thing about this article that drew my attention and a lot of other individuals. It was the fact that we saw a lot of industry figures from developers from Blizzard, Obsidian, Insomniac, and so on and so forth, all giving their opinions on this game. And I think that whether or not you think that this indie developer was wrong or right, this was taken a little bit out of proportion. Yes, a lot of AAA developers chimed in with their feelings on Baldur's Gate 3, and yes, it obviously jumped out to be something much bigger. And we even saw IGN publishing their own article on this situation, or I should say video, from Dustin LeGray, I think that's his name. I apologize if I said that wrong. But this video has 126,000 likes to only 1,000 dislikes, and a lot of people just completely agreeing with the sentiment shared in this video, which is somewhat along the lines of the coverage that I've given in recent weeks. And actually, if you check the article or the description, I'm actually cited as one of the people that they credited for broaching the topic beforehand. But yeah, like the comment section, this is the most based video IGN has ever uploaded. More stuff like this, the Act Man, and it's pretty much a lot like this from all of the comment section. A lot of people saying this is the only good IGN take that they've ever had in the last decade or so. But this is one clip or one part of it I'll show.
I implore AAA devs to look at these games that are being celebrated and look at your pipeline to see why the consumer is getting frustrated about the experience I outline in this video. And obviously try and make an improvement, because telling me how hard it is when you're breaking profit and revenue records isn't a super compelling argument from the customer's perspective. Is Baldur's Gate 3 an outlier? Yes, but I for one
agree.
wish it could become the standard, and being told
Exactly.
to shut up because I don't know game design doesn't feel super constructive. But hey, I'm just some idiot on the internet who doesn't.
And the thing is, with this opinion, it's more centered at the publishers, because the low-end developers, we're not talking about them necessarily. I don't think that they don't even have any say in the decision-making with these RPGs. And if we talk about all of the chaos that we've seen with the development of so many games the last couple of years, the common denominator is always the executives, the publishers, chasing trends, throwing microtransactions when it shouldn't be there, releasing games unfinished. They know the state of these games. And obviously, there are a couple of examples that don't exactly align with that, but most of the time, that is exactly what happened. Look at Red Dead Redemption. It just released a couple of days ago. $50 new conversion is what they called it. The reason why it's being released at that price point, it should have been like $30. It's because of publisher greed. That ultimately is what's happening. People have called out Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick for his hypocritical comments in the past about his feelings on ports and remasters. But again, they wanted to make money, and they probably will because of the brand name. And that's the thing with a lot of these franchises, especially the ones we love. These publishers trace trends. Battlefield's a great example. They wanted their own little Overwatch Tom Clancy clone of sorts. They went away from the franchise DNA because they thought it'd be more profitable. Ended up backfiring big time in their face. Now, again, with this video specifically, we saw a lot of gamers, a lot of journalists, some applauding it. When gamers expect a game to be good after spending $70 on it. Saw another tweet. There's 5,000 likes. It's not really setting new expectations and more showing people that AAA games can be fun and successful without chasing trends over monetization or turning studios into dev gulags. Exactly. Another tweet. AAA developers want a game launches without needing a day one patch because of bugs and crashes. And again, when I speak about AAA developers, when I speak about Blizzard, when I talk about Insomniac, my comments never have been directed at the developers. It's just more so the publishers, the ones that are in charge of those studios, the ones making the decisions about how these games are delivered and such. We had another tweet from another popular streamer. Yeah, this is ridiculous. You simply cannot be making content in games this great. Set expectations too high. Devs better start making crappier content to keep things in check. Some studios are already doing that. Others can learn. Obviously, this is sarcastic. Now, Destin did kind of go into damage control after this video, because a lot of developers started to mock and to be outraged by it. We're going to get to those tweets in a second, but this is the follow-up tweet he had on this situation. I'm working on a follow-up to the Baldur's Gate 3 piece. A lot of great points have been made about what I could have done better. It's also clear that I touched on something that has been bubbling up for customers for a long time, and I want to do a better job exploring it in a way that's fair to developers. I'll take the presentation lesson to heart. I will be contacting experts privately, but completely understand if the response is stuff it for now. And he got a lot of that stuff it from developers in response to the video, and the title of it saying that they're panicking. To be clear, the piece was meant to express my own frustration with the current state of AAA gaming, and I didn't intend to offend the hardworking developers out there or rile up fans against them. Now, once again, I want to reiterate this original Twitter thread, which started all of this controversy, originated from an indie developer, and it blew up out of proportions, in which we saw lots of AAA developers remarking on it. And there was disagreement with this sentiment that this game shouldn't be raising a standard. We saw one developer, this is something a lot of people have been talking about. I talked about in my original video from like a month ago, in which a developer that used to work at Riot Games saying they disagreed with it. And we saw other developers disagreeing. So it's not like this is one consensus that all AAA developers believe that standards shouldn't be raised. We even saw the founder of Larian responding saying that standards are meant to be broken. There is no standard. So regardless, I wanted to bring that up because we had this specific article coming from a former journalist, former game developer. I'm not sure what he does necessarily right now, but yelling is not journalism. That was his response to the video. We saw lots of outrage to IGN's video. We're going to go over more tweets in a second, but this is something that's been shared by a lot of developers, this specific article. I decided to comment on this as a former journalist myself after a few people told me that the video raises a good point. I think it does. I will first say that no point is raised in this video. The video instead asks a rhetorical question about what has been posted ad nauseum since the advent of DLC. Why can't AAA games come out with perfect polish from day one? And I think that really simplifies IGN, what they were saying, what gamers have been criticizing about this AAA games industry the last couple of years. Because it isn't just about polish. It's all over monetization, the unfinished state of games, and there's just so many controversial things that games have done. The NFTs, the blockchain nonsense. We go publisher to publisher. Each of them have some sort of controversial aspect that they've been exposed for the last couple of years. Now, instead of talking to people and attempting to answer that question, IGN's Destin Legary chooses to make a reaction video multiple times admitting he doesn't know anything about the subject, but is simply angry. This is not what journalism should be. Using angry gamer language when no research has been done, as admitted by the videographer, along with naming a bunch of game devs and showing their tweets. Again, this originated from an article from a journalist, Game World Observer, so it's not like he went out of his way to put these developers on blast. And again, public website anyway, invites angry fans to go harass them, which is of course what is happening. I have not seen any proof of that myself, but I've said this numerous times. Again, there's no reason to go after these developers for their opinions. That's just ludicrous, stupid. They don't even have a say in most of the decision making with what games are going to be and when they're going to release. This reminds devs of 2014, you know what he's mentioning, GG, and naturally we do not like it. In the abstract, here's a big part of it. Games release in imperfect states because devs either run out of money or the shareholders of their parent company mandate that a game must come out in a certain window, which devs have no control over. I've said that myself. And he talks about the individual games that have been praised lately. Baldur's Gate 3, which was launched in a polished state, actually launched in early access. Again, I think that Baldur's Gate 3 has proven that there are other ways games can release. Tears of the Kingdom. Why was this so polished? Because Nintendo has literal billions of dollars in cash reserves. And you know what lots of publishers have? Billions of dollars in cash reserves. From Software, their past success has led them to be given a blank check and a ready when it's ready attitude. Again, that's something that we could uphold for a lot of this industry, but these publishers do not care. The point is to think that of Baldur's Gate 3 as an immaculate polished release out of the gate is incorrect, and if you held other games to that standard, it would not make sense. After all, Baldur's Gate 3 took 3 years from early access launch at $60 to where it releases in a polished state, but simply other games cannot be held to that standard because that standard is illusory. There was an opportunity with a video like this to give players context for why games release the way they do, but instead it was designed to incite anger directed at a few devs. No, it wasn't. It was incited to show that consumers, gamers, are very upset with the state of games, especially all of the game releases we've had this year. So many of them have launched unfinished, they've been buggy, they've been a mess, and it's only getting worse with time. And he says to incite anger directed at a few devs, that was certainly accomplished as this indie developer is getting harassed relentlessly. Again, if that is happening, I have not seen it myself, but that is horrible. I don't know why anybody's directing at it, because the only thing he really did was start a conversation, and we saw a lot of developers go off, and that's where, well, it ignited this conversation that we're having now, something that maybe we should have had before. But is that really the kind of anger you want? Is that the tactic you want to take in a post-GG world? Anyway, that perspective was shared by a lot of developers, a lot of them tweeting out this article. We even saw some of them go after myself and some other YouTubers, and it was actually funny because if you look at IGN's original thread, they mentioned another YouTuber, Endymion TV. I apologize if I said that wrong. And they also mentioned Young. Yeah, Young, yes, says he never talked about this. And then the specific YouTuber Endymion wasn't mentioned anymore, I guess because he has controversial content. I don't know why IGN did that. It's ridiculous. You obviously watched his content. You credit him. Why would you take that out? It makes no sense to me. Ridiculous. But anyway, he said, it's true. I just didn't want to wade through that part. I guess he didn't want to mention other YouTubers that covered it. Well, maybe you should mention the article that really ignited all of this to begin with, but I guess not. We did see, again, other developers. We had one from CDPR saying, I haven't personally commented on panicking devs narrative because I don't like to give exposition to media and influencers who spin toxic narrative and craft illusion that devs are lazy and scam players. And again, I don't think that was the narrative that's happening here. A disconnect between gamers and developers right now. I think a lot of gamers' frustration is at the companies, not the specific developers on the low ground who are just trying to make the best game possible, but it's the decision makers. And for what it's worth, the last time I saw this lazy narrative, it actually came from a developer. This is a big story at the time, but a Bungie developer called Diablo 4 scaling lazy, and Blizzard's own boss, Mike Ybarra, responded to it saying lazy, huh? Another developer commenting on the original IGN piece saying only the most willfully illiterate and bad faith readers could see the dev conversations about Baldur's Gate 3 and turn that into devs don't like how good this game is because they need to make good games. Well, some other developers took it that way, just Just saying. We also saw this take, and I actually think this is a very good one. This is coming from the creative director at Arcane. I think he worked on Deathloop recently. I'd say some games, RDR2, Elden Ring, Breath of the Wild, Nier Automata, do make you feel like they are in another league entirely, as you can't fit them in your mind and break them down as creations projects immediately. This wow effect makes us feel just as mind blown and starstruck as when we were just players, not part of the industry. It's a wonderful feeling, yes, but after years of making games, it's challenging and can lead to questioning yourself as a significant trigger for imposter syndrome. You wonder how they made it. You don't immediately see the strings as you usually do, but time will help you digest this creation. Magician tricks and unfathomable scope wear off, and what is left is creative choices, technical expertise, and hard work, which we all understand. And that's a great take. And like I said, some developers have taken this to have a conversation about how we can make games better, how we can improve, and there has been some progress in that regard. We also saw another developer saying, what is the benefit of this narrative? They did an awesome job, and I will be playing their game to get inspired as a dev, and I find their success an overall benefit to the industry. Why should we feel threatened by somebody's win? This kind of thinking is toxic. And again, we also saw some other developers from some of your favorite franchises, some of your favorite RPGs, calling it a triumph. Creative forces behind series like Fallout, Dragon Age, The Elder Scrolls, and Pillars of Eternity react to Baldur's Gate 3, all of them giving positive opinions, saying that this is, again, a triumph. We saw another one. This was actually not a developer, but somebody who works in this industry, who tried saying, please, please, please put some thought into it before you proclaim this is what AAA should be moving forward. 6 years and 400 plus people with insane funding due to their IP have given Baldur's Gate 3. People don't know Baldur's Gate. Of course they know Dungeons and Dragons, but nobody cared about Baldur's Gate in the last couple of years. I mean, let's be real. It's truly unrealistic to expect this on a regular basis, and we have games of this size and scope pretty much releasing regularly. And as you can see, the director of publishing at Larian responded saying, what funding? And he responded to another developer who shared this same sentiment, mentioning 400 people, 6 years, and insane funding. They deleted their tweet, but he responded to it saying, small detail, I believe it's publicly known that Wizards of the Coast, who published all of this and let Larian even have the ability to make this, didn't fund Baldur's Gate 3. We paid for the privilege of creating a game with this IP. Again, they had to earn this opportunity, and this was something that could have gone wrong. If nobody was interested in Baldur's Gate 3, maybe they shut down. This has just been a huge success story for Larian. We saw another tweet. I don't know a single game dev who has actually conveyed the sentiment about Baldur's Gate 3. Instead, I've heard devs ask folks not to use the great things achieved by this team project as a weapon to use against other devs, which is exactly what's being done, although I do think some developers have pushed back on this scope. I mean, hell, one of them called it rockstar level nonsense. Let's be real, guys. And then this is some sarcasm to this tweet. I played Baldur's Gate 3 and immediately had to be hospitalized for intense imposter syndrome. The doctors say my career has another 3 years. My life as a game dev will pretty much be over. Thank you, IGN, for telling my story through 100% truthful and ethical reporting. Again, very sarcastic. Another one, as a developer, I can confirm I'm extremely panicked after Baldur's Gate 3's success, mostly because we released Phantom Liberty in 44 days, and I'm constantly tempted to play Baldur's Gate. Again, some people taking this sarcastically. Another developer, I don't know what to tell you. Raising the bar and setting new, higher, more difficult to achieve expectations is basically the core ethos of AAA development. I mean, you push up the rock, the hill gets bigger, you do it again, that's the whole deal. That's exactly what I've been saying, and that's what Larian's founder even said. We also saw this one. Let's talk about how IGN is actively having a negative impact on games. They are currently praising Baldur's Gate 3 for being perfection. It is, and continuing to double down on why can't other developers do this because of you, IGN. And they actually mentioned a very good point. IGN rated their early access for Baldur's Gate 3, giving it a 7 out of 10. And they mentioned how this is harmful to other developers who want to release an early access. And I actually completely agree with that. I didn't know IGN rated their early access, but I kind of do find that a little bit ridiculous. And that does hurt these games that are in progress. But I do want to push back on this early access point, because I don't know how many live services the last couple of years have launched pretty much in an early access state. The best example would be Fallout 76. And actually, to be fair, it's really almost all the live services the last couple of years. A lot of them take a couple of years to get to a point where they're even worth playing, in my opinion. But anyway, Baldur's Gate 3 right now is enjoying massive success, but the conversation surrounding this title is only continuing. And it does seem like there is a lot of disagreement specifically on this original narrative that came from this article, in which, yeah, a lot of developers push back on the scope of Baldur's Gate 3 and whether or not this AAA games industry can regularly deliver that. And I don't think every game needs to have Baldur's Gate 3 rescope, but I do think there are parts of the game. This is something I think the larger gaming community has been trying to hit home on: the over monetization, the unfinished state of games, the obviously the buggy state of games, and numerous other factors that we've seen in so many other titles the last couple of years. That's a problem. It's a problem that does need to be addressed, but it probably won't. It does feel like in recent years we've just been getting more and more examples of why a lot of people have problems with the modern state of gaming, especially in this digital age in which updates are now like just something everybody expects with games. It's become quite annoying, but it's a trend that probably will only continue with time because, again, these publishers are making more and more money than ever, and nothing is stopping that. And yes, obviously the larger casual gaming community really doesn't care about any of this stuff. We've seen that with Pokemon and how horrible those games have launched recently, and there's really nothing we can do about that except push back against these publishers when they pull this nonsense. But what do you make of all this? What do you make of the disagreement that we're seeing between developers and gamers? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.